Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Keys to AWS Optimization, the show where we share stories, concepts, and solutions that help you unlock your spend at AWS. Today, we are doing a deep dive into the relatively new AWS DevOps Agent with kind of a FinOps lens to it. As you all know, we love to dive into products and do some live demos and answering your questions throughout. If you are watching us on live, then feel free to drop any questions, comments as you go. Or if you're watching us on demand, do not worry. You can comment below on YouTube and like whatever you are watching. We've already got someone, hello from Canada. Let us know where you're kind of watching in from. I want to do some housekeeping just before we get started on the day. So, Yuriy, are you going to FinOps X this year?
Yes, I am. So I'm very excited about it. And you?
Good. Yes. So I'm doing a session. Love a plug. Adam and I and Brent are doing an advanced AI with AWS in Capital One. Make sure that you favorite the session, add it to your agenda on there. But if you're still thinking about if you should be coming to FinOps X, and if you're not sure and you decide you do, then you can actually get, I think it's $200 off your ticket by using the discount code keys to AWS on there, which is quite fun. So we love optimizing costs here. So I want to make sure that I want to give that a little plug. With that, let's get into meeting our lovely guests, one of which I'm sure many of you have seen before. But Mohit, why don't you tell everyone your 1-minute origin story?
I'm so happy to be here today. I'm a product management manager at AWS. I've been here for about 10 years. And I think my entire life really has been about helping our customers and developers really make it through the software development lifecycle a lot faster. So my first 7 or 8 years, it was really focused on the coding part of the lifecycle, especially for front-end web and mobile developers. What abstractions, what tools, what services can we build to get developers through the coding part of the software development lifecycle. And then last 18 months, what I've been hearing from customers is like, that's great, but actually I have a lot of pain, especially now with AI. Like my pain has shifted from coding to actually getting things out to production and operating those things once they are in production. I think AI kind of paired with that problem was very exciting. So last 18 months or so, I've been working on frontier agents that help developers and our customers at large deal with applications once they are in production.
Okay, that's
talking about today.
Yeah, amazing. And Yuriy, maybe folks who haven't met you before, do you want to do your 1-minute origin?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Yuriy. I'm Principal Technical Account Manager. I'm based out of Luxembourg, and I'm with AWS a bit more than 6.5 years so far. And my primary role and part of my basically job, day-to-day job, I work with large complex enterprise support customers in their day-to-day operations and help them to, optimize pretty much any aspect of their workloads in the clouds, from security, performance, resilience, cost, and helping customers to actually troubleshoot, identify issues, and fix them is very, very big part of my job. And also for the audience of this show, you probably know me more as also one of the founders and lead of Cloud Intelligence Dashboards project. So that's how I'm connected to FinOps, because quite a while ago we started a project which related to FinOps dashboard and advanced FinOps visibility. So, and then it became quite addictive for me, and still running it, and we still have a lot of customers who are very excited about it. So yes, that's pretty much me, and I'm super excited about this show and this opportunity to show to everyone DevOps Agent in action once it became a GA.
Yeah, so we're going to be talking about the changes of that and all about DevOps Agents. So if you're sitting thinking, I don't even know what this thing is, do not worry, we got your back and we will be diving into it. I also just saw a question, as some of you know, I was at the summit yesterday, the London summit. So I said, how was the summit? It went well. I'll let you all know when the YouTube video is up. And I already planned to just show you my swag. There was this lovely giant octopus I got, which I always think is funny. And the AMD gave me a lovely lamp. This is the stuff I love to pick up, stuff that I don't need in my house necessarily, but I like
just 2 swag items.
There's more, but that's like, I'm going to leave the octopus there. Just let it sit in with the show for us today.
I know you, I know.
Yeah, just the rest is. They had a really cool jelly bean thing that you put your arm in this like tube of jelly beans and they like spat out and you had to catch them. I ate too many jelly beans. Anyway, enough said. Let's get on to DevOps Agent. So why don't we kick off with the classic kind of start to these questions? Mohit, what is DevOps Agent?
Yeah. So as I picking off on kind of my origin story, as I was talking to customers, the sentiment was like, AI has really helped me get coding done faster, but wow, that's putting a lot of pressure on my production operations. Like production operations was already a bottleneck, when it came to troubleshooting and resolving production incidents and also making operational improvements and optimizations that would avoid those incidents altogether. Like that was already, becoming, that was already a problem. And then with AI and coding velocity increasing, like that problem became like 10x. So, customer after customer, all sizes, the sentiment is like, I really need help on the production operations. It's not able to keep up with my with my coding velocity. So we kind of, ask customers, well, what do you mean? And we uncovered two really key problems, and those problems are basically what became DevOps Agent. The first one is I really need help getting out of alarm as fast as possible. And if you unpack that, that means root causing an investigation automatically when it happens and making it as fast as possible to get to mitigation and getting out of alarm as fast as possible. So that's kind of the first thing that DevOps agent does. And the second one we heard is, that's great, but I still feel like I'm in a constant firefighting mode and I want to get out of firefighting. Like I just want to get to a better operational posture altogether. And that could be in all the dimensions that Yuriy talked about, avoiding incidents, but also optimizations when it comes to different dimensions, resilience, cost management and control, and so on. So the other big half of DevOps Agent is learning from, every incident is a learning opportunity, learning from prior incidents and looking around those incidents to identify systemic opportunities for improvement and optimization. And there's a clear tie-in there to FinOps, of course.
Yeah.
So in a nutshell, that is what DevOps Agent, in a nutshell, that is what DevOps Agent is. We launched a preview at reInvent and very excited that we had our GA just a few weeks ago, March 30th.
Yeah. Congratulations. And do you want to give a couple of examples? And we're going to go through some demo in a bit, but of what kind of things it does. Maybe just to list a couple of examples of.
Yeah, in the preview, there were two primary use cases. So the first one, as I mentioned, was troubleshooting and mitigation for incidents. So common example I hear from customers is someone sort of bypassed IAC, for example, went directly to the AWS console, made an IAM change that they thought was safe and it was quote unquote safe. And what turned out actually there was the downstream dependency. So, what the agent's able to do, even without a human in the loop initially, is an alarm gets fired because, hey, my service is down. And before like an on-call engineer even wakes up, it's able to say, okay, I figured out what's going on. There seems to be a correlation here with this incident starting and an operator logging into the console and changing this particular policy. And then it goes further and says, here's ways you can mitigate this and get out of alarm as fast as possible, right? You can, here's a spec you can feed into a coding agent like Hero to make the necessary IAM change, or here's some command lines, here's some commands, CLI commands you can run to get out of alarm and get your application running. So it's really focused on getting out of alarm as fast as possible. And when that on-call engineer wakes up, all the hard work has been done already. So the on-call engineer is there to basically say, yep, this makes sense. Let's go ahead and do this. And then the other half, just picking up on this example as well, like this shouldn't have happened in the first place, right? So so then what the agent will also do is say, here are some things that you can do in terms of your change control policies to prevent this kind of thing from happening altogether. In the
I love that.
Yeah, in the first place, you can implement drift detection. So that's really where the other half comes in. The other half learns from all of the problems that have been happening and says, hey, there's actually a better way. And the following, and it works the same way. It comes back with a spec, and that spec is something you can feed to a coding agent like Hero to kind of implement that change and get it fixed for the long term.
Excellent. And Yuriy, you're a TAM, you speak to customers all the time. How have you seen the adoption kind of coming in, or seen results from this? How are you seeing customers react to it?
Yeah, I think customers are very excited especially when they give it a try, and while service was in preview, there were customers who yeah, we wanted to get to GA, and then we will give it a try. Now it's in GA, so I see more and more customers actually getting on board and up to speed. What I really like about DevOps Agent is that it actually, when incident happens, and we deal with production incidents which our customers have, it usually takes quite significant amount of time to get some context. What happened? You have lots of alarms. You know which alarm was triggering, but if there is cascading errors, so it's tens of alarms maybe triggering simultaneously. And DevOps agent actually helps you to get this context very fast. And as we will show in the demo, even without you doing, getting into the keyboard, so it can do it proactively once your alarms get triggered. So it helps a lot with actually reducing the time for incident investigation, to actually understand what's going on, which alarms actually matters, what's as Mohit said, who made some changes or which systems got some changes recently. So you as an operator, as DevOps person, or basically someone on call, you can get way faster to the root cause than running through it manually or running through your run books manually and checking stuff.
Yeah, and two things that I kind of connect to this. One, I've just seen a question which was, what do you need to do to get the alarm triggered? And that's to do with CloudWatch alarms, right, Mohit? Which we're going to talk about a little bit later.
Yeah. So I think there's a few situations which might trigger an incident or investigation rather in DevOps Agent, and we see customers do both. One is you might have a ticketing system, right? A ticketing system like ServiceNow or in-house system. And that's where that's kind of your central repository for all incidents, and you can configure DevOps Agent to trigger an investigation, off of an entry in your sort of ticketing system, right? The other thing that's possible, and we see customers doing, is triggering off of, and this is where you were going, is triggering off of alarms or alerts in their observability system. So we have built-in integrations, where possible. And where it's not built in, we have a webhook capability, so you can basically plug in anything. And I believe Yuri's demo will show that.
Yeah, and the reason why I think that's super interesting is because this kind of quarter, we're doing a lot of episodes on the show, which I'm branding holistic FinOps. So looking at different lenses to look through FinOps. So we've done some security, we're doing AI, we're doing backup process, we're doing observability and things like that. So what this boils down to as well is you need to have good observability, because if we're trying to connect this back to FinOps, say you do a right sizing operation, you're trying something out, and if you have good alarms to see how does your CPU get affected or your memory, whatever change you do, and then it can go through. If something does go wrong with your right sizing, DevOps Agent will be able to help. But what should encourage people to do is that means you can do more right sizing, because you have this safer safety net kind of to solve any problems. So if something does go wrong, you have this backup. And I'm just going to plug on the YouTube channel over here, we have a holistic FinOps playlist. And just one thing I would note is, if people are watching on this channel and this looks familiar, any new episodes of the show, you might want to just make sure you pay attention to this playlist moving forward. That's all I'll say on that. But yeah, just keep an eye on this playlist, which connects to the Amazon YouTube channel as a small thing. But let's keep going with DevOps Agent. So one thing I also want to know is, what's changed since it went GA? Wait, yeah, GA. GA?
Yeah, GA, general availability. Yeah, so so the long story short is a lot. One of the great things about doing public previews in AWS is it opens up the door to get tons and tons of feedback from customers, which we did. And our team moved really fast. So we were able to implement a lot of the feedback for our GA a couple of weeks ago. So I won't list out all the features. I'll kind of list the categories of features, because Yuri's gonna demo them. So I don't want to steal the thunder. But the two buckets really, features and pricing. So I'll just really touch on both. So on the feature side, four real buckets. We added all kinds of new use cases. So we added support for actually doing Azure and on-prem investigations along with AWS investigations. We added an entirely new task type. So before, as I mentioned, we had like investigations and prevention. Now we added this, what we call kind of an on-demand SRE assistant. So you can ask really anything. And from those anything questions, you can get really beautiful custom charts and reports that really kind of expands the surface area of what you can do with DevOps Agent. Second bucket is intelligence. We did all kinds of things to make the agent smarter. So both in terms of getting to a root cause faster and higher quality. So it now indexes all of your code, so it can use that as a signal into root cause and recommendations for getting out of alarm. We introduced the concept of skills, which many of you may be familiar with it from other kind of AI products. That allows you to inject your own run books and best practices, and also we have our own built-in skills to learn from like prior incidents. Added all kinds of integrations. So I talked about Azure, but a number of other integrations as well, like PagerDuty and Grafana. And finally, a number of enterprise features. So we expanded from 1 region to 6 regions, added support for private VPC, customer managed keys, all kinds of enterprise features. So team did an amazing job reacting to kind of the customer feedback and getting all of this out in just a few months after preview. And then the second thing we announced is our pricing. Won't share all the details here, but the key thing is got a lot of feedback from customers, and we didn't want to put any friction in terms of just getting things set up. So there's no charges for getting DevOps Agent set up, configuring your agent spaces, configure your integrations. You only pay for when DevOps Agent is actually working on your behalf. So just one kind of charge, pay as you go, only when it's actually working. And on top of that, we introduced a credit program for AWS support customers. So for many AWS support customers, the majority of their DevOps agent will just be included as part of that.
Brilliant. And if you have any questions about any of this stuff, please feel free to email costoptimization@amazon.com. If you have any questions about DevOps Agent or anything else, then please let me know. Excellent. So there's a lot of fun features. I know what you're all thinking. When are you getting to the demo? Yuriy, you ready to dive into this lovely demo?
Let's go.
All right. So we've gone. This is the DevOps Agent console in the console.
Yes.
How meta. All right. What are we gonna? Oh, any like things we need to do before getting access to this?
Well, not really. So it's basically available. You don't need to opt in anywhere. So you just go here and just need to create a few things, which we will show now. The main configuration item, or basically building block of the DevOps Agent, is agent space, right? The first thing that you actually need to do is create agent space, and agent space will define kind of agent boundaries, right? If I may. So for example, you might want to have an agent space per maybe different applications, or agent space per maybe different teams who operate like different workloads and stuff like that. So basically agent space, it's a boundary which defines different connections in configuration. But before going into creation of agent space, there are a few also things that you can configure optionally to integrate some other tools and products which you are using with DevOps Agent. It's called capability providers. So you can actually register different capability providers with DevOps Agent. For example, you can register your source code repository, like I registered my GitHub repository, or you can add some MCP servers and integrate with them. And for the sake of this show, because it's like targeted to FinOps audience, I went and actually registered billing and cost management MCP server, which DevOps Agents then will be able to use. You can integrate it with Slack. And again, I have my Slack integration here. And there are plenty of other integrations which you can have. So for example, if you use one of our telemetry partner solutions like Dynatrace, Datadog, New Relic, Splunk, Grafana. You can actually register those integrations, and you just need to provide few connection details and authorization details as well, and you will get it registered here. And as Mohit mentioned, also there are integrations with other cloud providers like Azure Cloud and pipelines with Azure DevOps. And Mohit, maybe you can just share a few more details how integration with Azure works under the hood.
Yeah, absolutely. The key thing is it's a first class. It really is a first class integration, and it addresses it at two levels. So the first one is when it comes to sort of root causing, mitigating issues, and finding long-term recommendations. The thing we've done here is all you have to do is pick Azure Cloud, right? We don't make you pick individual Azure services like Azure Monitor, Azure Resource Manager. We really worked hard to make it just be, connect to Azure, and we will figure out what services to use across the Azure portfolio to really give you the best insight when it comes to troubleshooting and incident prevention. And then separate from that, we hear from customers that whether or not they're deploying their apps to Azure, they're using Azure. They may be using Azure DevOps as their source control repository and for their pipeline. So that's why you see Azure DevOps kind of broken out separately. So the idea is, yes, many customers may want to use these two things together, but they don't have to. They could use them separately. And also, one really neat thing about this is, we have customers who have workloads perhaps split across, applications and workloads split across AWS and Azure. So what this lets you really do is kind of troubleshoot across both. So if my application is spread, I have an issue, the agent can figure out if it's on the Azure side or the AWS side and kind of root cause accordingly.
And with these, I mean, it's the same, reminds me of Compute Optimizer and the data you can build in, because I know they have things like Dynatrace and stuff like that. And it's like whenever we have these, we're always trying to make it as simple for you guys to utilize. So it's like meant to be a click and play. And we've got just two questions I just want to flag. What about permissions? I've added a link to permissions in the chat. So any IAM permissions to get access. I know people have a lot of regulations with what they need to. IAM is like sometimes the biggest challenge for a service. And a broader question, which is, does it take action for me, or is it a safeguard? So Mohit, does it do things for you, or is it more of like the investigation kind of process?
This is a great question, and Yuriy will demo this as well. Today, it stops just short of taking action. So if you have an incident, and then we come up with a mitigation, we will provide you with command line commands that you can run, and we'll also provide you with an agent-ready spec. And an agent-ready spec is designed to be something you can feed into Kiro to fully close the loop. And we do have customers who built in some automations to that effect. So they take the spec using the API, feed it into Kiro, and close the loop. Today we don't yet take actions. We kind of stop at that level based on what we've heard from customers. Same thing holds for the incident prevention recommendations as well.
Yeah, it's worth to mention that if you connect your custom MCP servers, which actually under the hood can make some mutating actions. So then you can ask DevOps Agent to make that action. But so that's why if you connect in MCP servers, there is even a warning that make sure that you connect like read-only actions and stuff like that. But you can technically add some mutating actions. Yeah. All right, let's go to the space and let's talk more about.
Before you move on, sorry. Go back to the capability ones. With MCPs, what one did you have your MCP plugged in? I missed it. Which ones did you have your MCPs that you added in?
Yeah, I plugged in here billing and cost management MCP. So that's the one that basically can query pricing information, can go and query your cost explorer, can go and get some details from Compute Optimizer. So it has quite a lot of different actions.
Cool. And before we move on, there was another question, which was, is this compatible with A2A protocol? Anyone? I don't know what that is. Do we need more context? All right, let's go.
No, we can take it.
Yeah, the short answer is not yet. Although there are many ways that you can integrate our agent with other agents or other dashboards that our customers are doing already, like via our APIs and via MCP and so on. But yeah, we continue to work on all kinds of ways to bring the agent into your existing workflows and to collaborate with other agents.
Yeah, any feedback, cost optimization at amazon.com, you know where to put it. All right, so we're making a space. So like Yuriy said, a kind of bucket of things together. So maybe this is an application or a couple of applications, correct?
Yeah, so it's basically a bucket for agent in which it's going to operate. There are not many settings here. So first you can choose the language for the agent in which you want to speak with you. And there are plenty of languages, so it's quite nice. Then you can define an IAM role under which agent will basically invoke actions, which is pretty cool. And by this role, you actually defining the scope where agent has access to. So that's answering the question about permissions. So you can either get auto-created role, or you can assign existing role, and whatever that role has access to, DevOps agent will have access to. If you want to limit DevOps agent to access only particular resources, you can do that with IAM role.
And with the tagging, now with the pricing Mohit mentioned, do these that come through cost allocation tags? Is that how usage could be followed, Mohit?
Yeah, so this is a standard AWS service, and that we meter the usage of the different tasks that we offer, and then yes, absolutely, you will see it in the car console, the billing console, and so on. And then you can also see that side by side with the support credits, so you can understand your usage against your support credits.
Excellent, love to hear it.
All right, and then the last setting is you need to enable DevOps Agent Web App, which is very interesting thing, that you set up DevOps Agent in AWS console, but you operate DevOps Agent in different console, in DevOps Agent console, in DevOps Agent Web App. So here you basically, again, you define a role which will have access to DevOps Agent console and Web App. And that's it. So we have literally like 1, 2, 3 settings here.
Very quick.
We can click create. It takes some time. So I have my Unicorn Rentals space already created. So we can go and hear what we've got once we created the space. So
and just before you move on, by default, because of all the capability providers, you might be covering this in a second. They're all the ones that you've allowed general DevOps agent to access. Do you have to re-add them to each space, or do the space get access to everything?
Yes. Okay, so now inside the space, first of all, I can select which AWS accounts are in the scope of the space. If I have workloads running around multiple accounts, I can add those accounts as secondary sources. So it's pretty cool. Then I can add now here my capabilities from DevOps agent capabilities to space capabilities now. So for example, here for communications capabilities, I've added now Slack integration, and just as one setting, I provided my Slack channel identifier. So that's why, again, if you have multiple teams who have different Slack channels, you may want to have different agents, so they will send messages to different channels, right?
Places.
Then I added here MCP server, and I selected 19 tools from that MCP server, billing and cost management, because I didn't need something like budgets or billing views. I'm not using them, for example, here, so I didn't select them. So, but when you basically click add, you can select from the list of your registered MCP servers here. And I have also created webhook, and webhook will allow us to actually trigger incident investigation, basically trigger investigation, because one of the ways how we can trigger investigation is manually, but other way is we can trigger it programmatically. And in our case, we are going to trigger, like have CloudWatch alarms triggering investigation via webhooks. So I've also enabled a webhook. It's basically just an API endpoint, And you get also a secret when you enable it. Of course, like you don't need to save it and store safely, but then it's basically API endpoint by triggering which you can start incident.
Okay. Talk me through this with CloudWatch then. So I've got an application. If my CloudWatch alarm goes off, is that through here or somewhere else?
Yeah, it's through here, and we can actually slowly move to our demo scenario, right? Let me just share a screen. So for the sake of our demo, what we are going to have is we are going to have quite a simple application which just process some customer requests via API gateway, and it has Unicorn Rentals API endpoint. And then behind API gateway, there will be rental processor Lambda, which uses DynamoDB as backend. And it does some reads and writes to that DynamoDB table. Then we have also, of course, Lambda pushes some CloudWatch metrics, logs, and stuff like that. And we have set up 3 CloudWatch alarms. So it's amount of errors, then average duration for the Lambda. We don't want it to, to be very slow. We want our responses to be fast. And then we want to monitor some DynamoDB throttling. And then to get alarms to trigger webhook of DevOps Agent, we have also SNS topic integration. So we just set up on those alarms to also send them to SNS. So it's very native integration. So it's a feature of CloudWatch. And we have a very simple basic Lambda, which reads SNS topic and just calls DevOps Agent webhook. So that's the way how you can actually trigger investigation from CloudWatch. You have SNS integration and then webhook.
So you need this between layer between CloudWatch and,
for CloudWatch.
And where do you? Yeah, for CloudWatch. Where did you find? Is there any example code of like where to make this Lambda for this webhook forwarding, or did you just know how to write that?
Yeah, I can share examples. So the repository with this demo environment is publicly available. I've published it on GitHub, so people can just use it as an example. I think in DevOps Agent documentation, we also have quite some snippets and code snippets and examples how what payload should be of that API call to webhook.
Perfect. Yeah, put it in the private chat and then we can share it out. Because I always, especially this kind of stuff. So, and Mohit, is this the best practice to, if it's something from CloudWatch, to do this SNS to Lambda? Is that the best way of doing it?
Yeah, this is the best way of doing it. Like in CloudWatch, there's not a direct webhook integration, and this is the pattern we recommend.
Okay, brilliant. Well,
if you use Grafana, Grafana supports native webhooks, so you can trigger webhook with Grafana. So you won't probably need this Lambda, but with CloudWatch, that's kind of default. All right.
Interesting. Okay.
Okay, so that's our setup, and our application is running, and it's doing great. And then we will see something will go wrong, right? And there will be some errors, and we will see how DevOps Agent is going to investigate it. But so maybe let's give it a try. I will just make sure that my alarms are in okay state and my application up and running, and then I will just run my load generator. So it's going to generate some API calls, so real production traffic going to our application now. And as you can see, there are some errors happening, and some successful calls, but also some errors. And let's put it aside for now. So as someone like DevOps of Unicorn Rentals, I'm not aware that anything is happening. So the traffic is going, and maybe I'm somewhere, 10 p.m. and I'm having a nice dinner, so I even don't know that I've got these errors or traffic spikes. So let's see what is going to happen next. Before that, maybe Mohit, we should cover DevOps Agent web app before we go into details of investigations.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, let me open. Because as I mentioned before, when you create a space, it also creates operator web app. And if you go to operator web app,
Yeah, the idea here is that operators who will be the customers of this product may or may not have access to the AWS console. So this is like a purpose-built app that kind of lives on its own outside the AWS console, and customers can authenticate using their organizational identity systems, things like Okta.
Yeah. Which makes sense, because especially for just access in itself, like you want to keep these things segregated for different teams, and also simpler to move around.
Yeah, there are a few parts of this web app. It's basically a list of your incidents where you can see what's happening, and so basically we actually can see here that we have some incident investigation already pending to start, but also because we have Slack integration, we can see that we just got a message that investigation started. I've begun investigating an issue that requires attention. So as a DevOps, at 10 p.m., I get this notification probably together with a page with my alarm, but I'm kind of, I see that DevOps agent started investigation, so maybe I don't really need to run that fast. I can give it some time to actually investigate. Or maybe if I'm, driving, I cannot just log in. So I already a bit assured, and I can, have a look here what's going on and see some investigation details, because it's going to publish me here in Slack some updates regarding the investigation process.
Interesting.
All right. So let's see what's going on here.
Do you mind zooming in a tiny bit on the screen?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. All right. So what happened is now our errors triggered CloudWatch alarms, and alarm triggered through webhook investigation, and investigations here started. So, and there are plenty of different actions which DevOps agent is going to do. It's going to check CloudWatch alarms. It shows you which tools it actually calls. And basically it does some triage of this event. Puts here also some like intermediary findings. For example, 88 DynamoDB write throttle events, which coincides with 10 Lambda errors. So it actually provides you a lot of details about the investigation process and status here. All right, so let me zoom out a little bit and let's see what we have. So it's also, as you can see, DevOps agent is pretty smart, and it can correlate your incidents to the previous events. So for example, I was running, by preparing this demo, I ran these errors a couple of times. And as you can see, it actually identified one of the events, and it says that, it happened in the same application, same region, same account, same time window, pretty much similar root cause. It's just a linked event, and it can actually provide me a link to the different investigation, the one that actually ongoing. So the one that was triggered and we just got started, and the second incident which was triggered by another CloudWatch metric, now linked together. So DevOps agent treats them as a one root cause, and it tries to understand what's going on now.
And as it's kind of going through this process of investigation, because you've obviously built this application to kind of go wrong in it. What for just the background, what is the thing that's wrong with it? What's causing the errors?
Let's wait till it's finished and we will see.
Oh, okay, no spoilers, fair enough.
But I think we are getting some hints that DynamoDB throttling happens, and some things. So it also figured out that infrastructure was freshly deployed via CloudFormation. So I deployed
by Yuriy.
Yuriy redeployed everything, and it gets a lot of additional context from different sources. By the way, Mohit, which sources DevOps agent uses by default? Maybe we should also mention to everyone, because I see here CloudWatch, right? I see here it's probably runs some describe calls, but what else?
Yeah. So when you give access to an AWS account, assuming the IAM, the IAM kind of policy allows for it, it has access to everything CloudWatch, so metrics, logs, alarms. It looks at CloudTrail. CloudTrail is a very important source because it provides kind of the audit history of actions that were taken in that account, and then also we access the AWS Health API, which I think addresses a question that's coming here. So the agent is aware of AWS wide outages, so it won't go down a path saying, hey, there's something wrong in your application, when it knows there's an AWS Health outage. It integrates with AWS support data sources if you're a support customer. And then finally, it also has service-specific integrations. So integrations with EKS and things like container insights. And we're doing more and more all the time. So like literally with every one of our releases, more and more to get that kind of service level insight as well.
Yeah. Grabbing all this information again, this is one good thing about this, which I feel like people get but they don't really think about, is like the time. We said this a few times, like it saves you so much time. That is such a big optimization point of view, is that you'd have engineers spending so much time filtering through all of these tools, trying to piece these things together, and now it's done it for you. So it saves that, so that you can get back to running and developing new systems and building, rather than figuring out why something broke. What's it telling us now, Yuriy?
Yeah, so, and as you can see, I get all these updates in Slack, and again, I like, as someone who responsible for this application, it's very, very useful, because until I log into the console, I already see what's going on, right? And it says now investigation complete, then it send me also root cause, and so let's have a look what happened. We have DynamoDB table provisioned at only 2 write capacity units, very insufficient for our workloads, and Lambda function configured with only 128 megabytes of memory, right? So those are the root cause of DevOps Agent.
But that's as far as it goes, right? It won't change your configuration for you.
No, it won't change the configuration. Because, as Mohit said, it will provide some details about what you can do with your configurations to fix them. So basically, some command line calls and and commands. So let me actually show you how it looks like. So I just will pick previous very similar investigation, and then in investigation summary, you can see that here is your investigation. You have root cause, 2 write capacity units, Lambda under provisioned, and then you can actually get mitigation plan. So there is, and in mitigation plan, it gives you step-by-step guide how you can actually mitigate this issue. So you can prepare and get some details, then you see pre-validate, apply, and then it actually shows you some insights and details about costs, which we can cover now, but it actually provides you good mitigation details. By the way, another interesting thing is that if you want to chat about this issue, you can use this chat here, and you can ask, you can ask some stuff like, I don't know, tell me which risks associated with this mitigation. So you can pretty much ask anything here, and it will try to provide you more details. And if you want to speak to AWS support, here is a button, ask for human support. And you will get connected. DevOps Agent will create support case for you and will initiate a chat session with support engineer. So, and you will be chatting here in the same console. You don't need to go to AWS console, right? You will be chatting in the same console. So it's very, very handy and convenient. But under the hood, there will be support case, which, you can track in the console.
Yeah, and it helps the support engineer get up to speed faster, because some of the content from the investigation is shared with the support engineer.
Wow. I'm sure you had SF data, but it'd be so interesting to know like the speed of which it saves so much time. Again, everyone here I'm sure has spoken to some kind of personal support, and then they're like, well, what's this? Can you try this? Can you do this? And it's like they're just like, here's the information, they can look through it and then help you deduce what's missing. And where we've only got about 10 minutes left, and I want to make sure that we talk about FinOps with this.
Yeah.
So Yuriy, what do you see the lens? Obviously, we mentioned earlier observability of maybe right sizing and things like that. But how do we fit FinOps narratives into DevOps Agent?
Yeah, so because I actually, just for the sake of time, I like will show you how we can use it from my previous chat. But what you can do here is, for example, I connected billing and cost management MCP. So now DevOps Agent is going to use our pricing API, our cost explorer API to actually get details about cost. So I can actually ask a question, okay, right, I see that I need to increase read and write capacity units, but what about cost? How much is going to cost me, right? So I can ask a question, what will be the cost impact of this mitigation? And it actually here shows tools which it uses. So as you can see, it used billing and cost management MCP, which I connected here, AWS pricing API, then Cost Explorer API. And it actually got to some details about cost impact. For example, for DynamoDB, it says that if I increase provisioned write capacity units to like 100, 200 WCU, it's going to cost me around like from $48 to $96 per month, depends on how much I provision. And then if I use after scaling, I can reduce it to $15 to $30 per month. But then it also figured out that cost-wise, the best for me is to use on-demand mode, because my workload is really like small. It's not a lot of writes per month. So the lowest price will be with on-demand mode. So you see how cost awareness actually changed a little bit the recommended solution.
Yeah, that's really clever. Mohit, any other things you suggest when it comes to being aware of cost with these kind of things?
No, I think the pattern that Yuriy showed here is perfect, right? You can and he showed an example of pulling in a first party, right? a first party API, but you're not limited to that. If you have runbooks or sort of best practices around cost in your wikis, you can pull that in. If you have other sources that might influence your kind of cost decisions, you can pull those in as well. But the pattern that Yuriy described is perfect, right? The agent comes back with a mitigation plan, and then our chat has that context. So you can say, hey, given the cost tools and data sources, you have access to what you would recommend. So you don't have to necessarily stop with just the API that Yuriy pulled.
Yeah, and the reason, I assume, the same reason why Kiro and the console and whatever kind of AI tool, all those things, they always give you the default broadest solution. Because I've often had people talk about, why does it always like give me the for example, with CloudWatch is the easiest one, the never expire option with CloudWatch logs, and it's because we don't want to delete your data. We don't want to give you anything that's not going to work, and so it's going to go for the safest route. But it is up to you to encourage that developers to ask that question to kind of consistent with that, and also it proves that you should be critical of the recommendations. You should look at the mitigation plan and think, how does this work with my application? Is this the right setup? And be more probing with that, because just because it's the default like blanket example, yes, it will work, but is it the best for your application? You always got to have that kind of thing in mind.
Yeah. So and the cool part is that I can follow up with it. So for example, I can say, okay, maybe like it recommended me, like it compared with 100 to 100. So I can just ask, what will be cost with 15? So I don't need again to go anywhere else. I can ask it right here. Before we close this presentation, I just want to cover a few more things: skills and account usage. I think skills is very important part.
Go for it.
Yeah, so let me just put it here. Skills in DevOps Agent actually allows you to plug in skills, which is generally a guidance for it, and how to steer through the investigations. And you can create your own skills. So for example, by default, DevOps Agent generates some skills based on infrastructure which it actually analyzed. So for example, here is what I have in my account, and for DevOps Agent demo, it discovered it, and it added some instructions about these resources. So then it can use it during the investigation as well. But also, let me just go back to skills. I added my skill, billing cost analysis. So what I did here, I actually added a skill which provides some instructions that use the skill to analyze cost impact during an incident investigation, provide cost-aware remediation recommendations via billing and cost management MCP tools. And I provided some details, which tools I expected to use and what I expected to provide. So now, together with MCP integration and the skill, it actually it's going to follow it. So you bring it basically a guidance how you want investigation to go. You can add as a skills your operational runbooks or incident response playbooks as also a guidance for DevOps Agent. So basically, how you are troubleshooting your incidents, DevOps Agent can follow the same patterns, which is pretty cool.
Amazing. Oh, I love that. If when I was at KPMG trying to decipher why my IAM permissions and something had broken, could see us now, folks, it would be like mind blown of what these things can do. And I love this kind of adding this in, which is very similar to things like the steering docs that we talk about in Kira, which is like adding that cost awareness into your AI is amazing. What was the other thing you wanted to do? Skills and...
Yeah, and then also another important part is if you want to see how much you use in DevOps Agent, how many like investigation hours, because Mohit mentioned at the beginning that it's DevOps Agent pricing is based on investigation hours. So here in this account usage, you can see how many investigation hours you already consumed and evaluation hours and basically all these different metrics, so you can track your usage.
We would love to see it. We always want to make sure we're tracking everything. Brilliant. Is that everything in the demo? I think that's...
There is one more thing.
Oh, okay, go for it quickly.
And it's pretty cool. It's called Ops Backlog. It's basically DevOps Agent. Again, Mohit touched at the beginning this part that after all the investigations, DevOps Agent can analyze, for example, by default on weekly schedule, or you can trigger this analysis manually. It can analyze your past incidents and find some patterns and provide here some recommendations what you can improve here. So here you can find very different recommendations. In this case, it saw across many incidents my DynamoDB throttling, so it actually suggests on demand mode. It could be pretty much some configuration improvements. In some cases it was providing me recommendations about my cloud formation templates and some things that I can improve there. It could be other recommendations. So pretty much it's very useful feature. I really recommend you also to keep an eye on it and actually look at these recommendations here.
Excellent. I feel like I've learned so much. I hope all of you have too. We're going to close off with our Richard summary and Secret Richard and some things to take away. So Richard is from Secret Richard, who's been listening. He is not AI, he is real, and has a summary. You can go to the end of almost all of our episodes and see this summary. So DevOps Agent is the teammate you always wanted. So true. Stop short of taking action, provide you ready to push a solution. Uses agent space to find boundaries. We love those boundaries. And cost impact can be factored in to provide alternate solutions. We are also going to go into some suggestions here. So a couple of things to take away. Number one is all our episodes get a written format of it in Builder Center. The easiest way to find them, folks, is to follow me on Builder Center. We also have summaries of my other show, How to Build with AWS, and the catalog of that. It's also a great place where I put a lot of articles for stuff that don't require a whole blog, but maybe just a little summary. Also, if you haven't joined already, join the Customer Acceleration Team LinkedIn. This is where we post about upcoming episodes, blogs from the team, people who have come on a lot of the episodes. This is Yuri's repo that he showed today, so make sure you check that out. My session from FinOps X. And finally, like I said, make sure that you check out this playlist moving forward for updated episodes. And make sure you like this video wherever you're seeing it and subscribe to that channel. With that is it for today's episode. Any questions, feel free to email us, or if you could take a second to like this video on the AWS YouTube channel so others could find it, and drop any comments. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Steph.